This conference will now be recorded.
Hello everyone. Good morning, good evening. Am I audible for everyone?
Yes, sir.
Okay, let me start sharing my screen. I hope my screen share is visible now. Can one of you please confirm?
Yes, it's visible.
Okay, fantastic. So I welcome all of you guys to the performance testing demonstration class using JMeter tool. Thank you for showing your interest in attending this demonstration class. So I'll give a quick introduction about myself, and I'll also talk about the course curriculum or the table of contents that I have designed exclusively for performance testing using JMeter tool. I also have the table of contents handy with me. I'm putting it on the screen. So I'll give a quick overview about my profile so that you know who your trainer is, and you can have a quick understanding about myself as well. So myself, I'm Kiran again. Um, I have close to 18 years experience in the software testing industry and have been doing these corporate trainings and retail one-to-one trainings from the last 15 years. I have done these trainings across the length and breadth of India and outside India as well for a lot of corporate clients. So far, I have done close to 500 plus corporate trainings, thus benefiting nearly almost 4,000 plus participants. And coming to my areas of expertise, apart from JMeter performance testing, I also do trainings on multiple subjects on the software testing, such as the regular manual testing, ISTQB course, automation testing of web applications using tools like Catalan Studio, and automation testing of the backend applications or the APIs using tools such as Postman, Catalan Studio, SOAP UI, Ready API, Insomnia, Tailend, and also through JMeter. And apart from this, I also do security testing trainings using multiple set of tools such as Burp Suite, Z Attack Proxy, Network Mapper, etc. And on the DevOps side, I dealt tools such as Git, GitHub, GitLab, Jenkins, Bitbucket, etc. So these are the areas of my expertise that I deal with, and so I'll come back immediately to performance testing subject, which is the demonstration class that we have scheduled for today, which is a batch that we are starting from today. So please believe that this is day zero class, not just a demo class and then we leave it. The continuation of it happens starting from tomorrow as well. Okay. And at any point of time, if you guys have any questions related to the course, you can interrupt me in between and you can ask me your questions. Don't have to wait really towards the end of the session. Okay. So, so I have divided this entire performance testing subject using JMeter tool into multiple chapters. By the end of this course, the participant who successfully completes this course along with practicals would be able to confidently and comfortably say that they are intermediate level expertised on the performance testing tool using JMeter. Okay, so let's talk about what do I have in store for this particular course. So when we start with chapter one, which is obviously the day one topic, which is tomorrow's topic. So in chapter one, we will talk about the basics of performance testing. So in this chapter, I will teach you what is testing, what are the objectives of testing, such as primary objective, secondary objective, and what are the classifications of testing, That's where you'll come to know that we have something called functional testing and then something called non-functional testing. And why does performance testing comes under non-functional testing? So that introduction is what we'll have in chapter 1, followed by certain examples of non-functional testing techniques such as security testing, performance testing, compatibility testing, I can say reliability testing, usability testing, etc. So performance testing typically comes under non-functional testing. So again, we'll talk about that in detail in the upcoming classes. And most importantly, in this chapter, we'll talk about the client and server architecture. I'm sure most of you are aware of what is a client and what is a server. But what is important is the architecture that's there around the client and server. How does the client, such as a browser, communicate with server, and how does the server, such as Apache Tomcat or Microsoft IIS server, communicates back with the client? Now we need to understand this, the architecture of client and server to understand the performance testing subject, or to understand even how a software typically functions, because this becomes the basis or the foundation block for our training program. Then we'll talk about the different types of performance testing that are available. So the list is never ending. We can talk about even 10 different types of performance testing, but they can be broadly classified under three categories, such as what is load testing, what is stress testing, what is soak testing, or what is endurance testing. So we'll talk about all these three definitions when this topic comes from day one class onwards. Then in performance testing, there are certain measurement metrics, or I can say there are something called key performance indicators, KPIs. Now, this is what your developer, your manager, your client expects you to provide when you say that you did performance testing using a tool called JMeter tool or any other tool in the market. So the metrics that we are going to capture are listed here. So I have listed most of the metrics that are asked in the interviews, that are asked in the real-time projects. Okay, so we'll talk about the definition of these metrics. How do we capture it using a browser, or how do we capture it using a tool such as JMeter? So this is what I have in chapter 1 under performance testing basics. Now I'll take a little pause here. Do you guys have any questions until this point? Okay, otherwise, am I clear until this point? Can one of you please unmute and let me know? Am I clear until this point?
Yes, yes.
Okay, thank you. I also messaged everyone on the chat. Uh, I need your names and WhatsApp number so that I can message you, or one of my team member will be messaging you back the course outline and further details. Okay, you can either message me one to one or you can put it directly over there. Now we'll continue with chapter 2. Now chapter 1 is a regular thing. Okay, it's not specific to JMeter. It's generic to any performance testing tool in the market. Tomorrow when you learn a tool called Gatling or LoadRunner or NeoLoad, chapter 1 remains same. It is the foundation block for everyone. Chapter 2 onwards, I'm going to be little specific to JMeter tool, because that is the tool we have figured out for this particular course. So in chapter 2, we'll talk about the introduction towards this wonderful tool called as JMeter tool, and we'll also have a GUI walkthrough of this tool. So the first thing that I'll be talking about is why JMeter. Why am I picking up JMeter? Why not LoadRunner? Why not NeoLoad? Why not Silk Test, etc., etc. So that is what I'm going to answer in chapter 2, followed by how do we download this JMeter tool from the official website. And the important aspect is for JMeter, there is no installation needed, because JMeter is a Windows batch file. You can just double click and the file will open and the tool will open. So you don't have to really install JMeter. That's another beauty about JMeter tool. Once we launch JMeter tool, we will talk about the different test elements in JMeter. Like if you see, currently I'm opening this in Google Docs, right? Here you have a file menu, you have edit menu, view menu. Similarly, certain features, features like this are also there for JMeter. We call them as JMeter test elements. So those test elements I have highlighted here. So we will have a quick walkthrough of what are these test elements, like what is a thread group, how do you define virtual users, how do you define ramp up, ramp down, how do you define the iteration count, loop count, and where do you define it, what is a sampler, what is a listener, what is a controller, what are assertions, timers, preprocessors, post processors. Every detail about each of these elements will be explained or given a practical understanding to you in chapter 2. Okay, and remember, this training is not just a theoretical training. This training is a practical training, and wherever there is a theory, I'm going to write it on a paint application to give you a real feeling as if it is a classroom training and I'm writing it on a blackboard. Okay, no PowerPoint presentations is used in my training. It's a direct live training only. So in chapter 2, we will understand about all these test elements. Now, if you don't understand these chapter 2 test elements, chapter 3 onwards will be a bouncer, meaning we cannot understand anything from chapter 3 onwards. So chapter 2 becomes a mandatory thing for us to understand and to keep in mind throughout the course, because these test elements only will help me and will help you to build a test plan for performance testing, for solving any of your test cases and the performance testing problem statements. Then we have chapter 3, building a test plan. So once we understood the test elements in chapter 2, the next step is how do you build a test plan in JMeter tool, because that is a starting step. So in a test plan, what do? We create a thread group, we add virtual users, we add the ramp up time, we add the loop counts, we add samplers, we add listeners, and we add a lot of other test elements. So I'll give you a small 1 or 2 examples of how you can build a basic test plan, so that you are prepared that, okay, for any problem statement that we are going to solve in this course or in your project, chapter 3 becomes an example for you. So chapter 3 is like a template that you have to keep in mind for solving any test case for which performance testing or load testing has to be conducted. Okay. Now from chapter 4 onwards or from chapter 3 onwards, you will see something like this: hands-on exercise. If you see here, that word hands-on exercise is listed everywhere. So this I have written only to make you guys feel comfortable that wherever I see hands-on exercise, it is a practical topic, no theory. Meaning it will be done directly on the JMeter tool while I'm explaining it to you. So they're all practical chapters. Then we have chapter 4, working with JMeter thread groups and samplers. Let me first explain what is a thread group. So a thread group is an element in JMeter where we define virtual users. Now you might say, what is a virtual user? Simple. See, in performance testing or load testing, it is all about how many users should we create so that they attack my server, or these users will go and hit my server, right? Now I cannot really recruit physical users or real test engineers and ask them to hit the server, because that is an expensive thing for us to do. So the concept of virtual users is created by these automation tools like JMeter. So these virtual users are created in an element called thread group. Okay. So in JMeter, we have different thread groups, meaning there are different ways to create virtual users. So you can create a virtual user using the default thread group. There is another category called setup thread group, which is like a prerequisite. There is another type called as teardown thread group, which is like a post requisite, something like a cleanup action that you can do towards the end of the test plan. Or you can install a plugin called custom thread groups, and you can do stepping thread group, you can do pacing, etc. So you'll understand all these words and terminologies probably once we get into chapter 4 and chapter 5. So understanding thread group and how to configure it will be explained clearly in chapter 4. Now once a thread group is created, you are ready with the practical you are ready with the virtual users creation. Now once the virtual users are created, these users are created to send a request to the server. So to send a request to server, we use an element called sampler. A sampler is nothing but a sample. A sample is nothing but a request. And every sample has a different protocol. Like when I submit something on the browser, right? So example, I'm typing something called www.google.com. Okay, let's say I'm typing google.com. So here you see the protocol that I'm using is HTTPS, right? So every request here, the request I typed is google.com, right? Okay, I think I did it. I went into search. Okay, now you see this. The request I typed is google.com and the protocol associated is HTTPS. So remember that every request you submit on the internet can have a different protocol, and JMeter handles different protocols in different ways. So samplers help us to work with different protocols. So I gave an example here. If you want to work with HTTP protocol or HTTPS protocol, you have a HTTP sampler. If you're working with FTP protocol, you have a FTP sampler. If you're working with JavaScript, let's say you wanted to work with some Bean Shell script or JavaScript, you have a programming sampler called Bean Shell sampler. If you're working with Facebook technology of APIs called GraphQL, you have a separate sampler that deals with GraphQL. If you're working with Java database connectivity with databases, you have JDBC samplers. If you're working with another protocol called Simple Email Transfer Protocol, which is the protocol that you use or I use to send emails, JMeter supports SMTP sampler. To read emails, we have another sampler called Mail Reader sampler. To debug all these samplers, we have debug sampler. So different samplers are supported by JMeter to work with different protocols. And I have given what all we will discuss in this course. Okay. Then in chapter 5, we'll talk about JMeter listeners. Now, what are you guys doing? I'm explaining what I'm going to teach in this course, and you guys are listening, right? And you're probably making a note of it somewhere in your brain, somewhere on a piece of paper, on your smartphone, or on your notepad. So you are listening and making a note of it because I'm speaking from the other side and you are listening on the other side. Similarly, when you send a request to the server using a sampler, server will give you a response and you have to capture the response. So JMeter provides something called a listener to capture the responses. So only in the listener you will find out all these key performance indicators. So I told that in chapter 1 I'll talk about performance metrics like what is the connection time, what is the response time, what is the latency, etc., etc. All these metrics you can capture it only in the listeners in chapter 5. So listeners are elements in JMeter that helps you to capture the response coming from server and help you with fine tune the metrics such as what is the latency, what is the connection time, what is the error rate, what is the throughput, what is the size received, what is the size sent, what is the average response time, etc., etc. All those things will be part of your chapter 5. Then in chapter 6 we have JMeter configuration elements. See, before joining this demonstration class, right, I did some configuration on my browser. Like I closed all other unused tabs or I closed everything, opened a new browser. That's a configuration. I have opened my TOC. I have opened a Google Drive folder where I am maintaining all the notes that I share with my trainees or with my students, right? And etc. Right? I mean, I have done certain configuration related to what is necessary for this demonstration class, right? Similarly, when you are doing performance testing in JMeter tool, you can configure certain things. And why do I configure it? I'll give one example. Maybe I did some performance test for a website called google.com and I gave a report to my developer. My developer comes back and says, Kiran, this report looks good, but is it pointing to Chrome browser or Firefox browser or Safari browser? Is it for Windows operating system or Linux operating system? Now, which environment should I consider for this report? So my developer here is interested in a specific infrastructure. So I have to configure certain things like that in my JMeter to give an answer to my developer. So to configure this question, I use this concept called header manager, where I can tell JMeter that you simulate as if this request of 100 users are going to server from a Chrome browser from a Windows operating system. So that configuration is what I can do in JMeter config element. Like that, we can do a lot of other configurations. Like my developer comes and says, okay, Kiran, you have to test this particular request but it is an authorization request. It uses a username and a password. So to configure that, we have this element, HTTP authorization manager. Sometimes my developer says, okay, you are testing the login test case, and I'm giving you 10 different valid usernames, 10 different valid passwords. Try to log into the application with all these 10 users and give me a report. Then I have to configure it using this element called CSV dataset configuration. And sometimes developer comes, uh, are you accepting the cookies? Are you declining the cookies? Because a real browser does that. So in your performance test case, are you considering the browser behavior? Then I have to use these two elements, cookie manager and caching manager. So we will talk about what all questions you will get from a real developer, from a real project requirements, and which elements in JMeter will help you. So that is what chapter 6 talks about. Then in chapter 7, we'll talk about JMeter assertions. Now the real meaning of an assertion is a conditional check. Like I sometimes ask the participants like, hey guys, are you with me? Am I still audible? Is my screen share visible? So this is a check that I'm doing, that I'm still connected with all the participants and they are enjoying my demonstration class. Right? That's an assertion I do. Similarly, when you do performance testing, you are doing it not for one user, not for one request. You are doing it for hundreds of users. You are probably doing it for 10 requests, 20 requests. You cannot manually sit and validate whether the response for each request is correct or not. And you cannot manually validate that the response for 100 users is correct or not. You need to put some automation in place so that the code you have written will take care of your conditional checks. Like your check is the response coming in less than 3 seconds? That's a check we can automate. You can cross check and write a piece of code asking JMeter, check whether the response code I'm getting from server is 201 created. You can also automate that the response body should not be 0 bytes. It should be minimum 1 byte, maximum anything. You can do lot of validations in JMeter, and it is necessary to do these validations because you are going to provide a report to developer. So before you provide a report, you need to automate the validations. Like Selenium you use, here we use assertions. That's what chapter 7 focuses about, and there are different assertions available. We will talk about them in depth, obviously, when the time comes. Then chapter 8, we have JMeter timers. Now what is a timer? A timer helps you to make JMeter behave like a real user. So to give an example, let's say I am visiting a website called, let's say, amazon.in. Maybe there is a sale going on, so I visited this page, amazon.in. Now once I visit amazon.in, I'm not quite sure which menu should I click on. So I'll spend at least 5 seconds to figure out which is the menu I have to click. So for these 5 seconds, I'm not doing anything on the client, meaning I'm not doing anything on the browser. These 5 seconds, server is not receiving a click or the server is not receiving a hit from Kiran. So how do I simulate these 5 seconds delay? The answer is JMeter timer. Let's say after 5 seconds, I figured out that I have to click on today's deals. So I click on today's deals. Again here, I'm scrolling down to see which is the one that I wanted to purchase. So when I'm scrolling down or when I'm scrolling up or when I'm stopping the scrolling, I'm not sending any request to the server. Let's say it's been close to 20 seconds and I have not clicked on anything. So for these 20 seconds, server is idle from Kiran. So how do I simulate that 20 seconds idle time? In JMeter, you have this concept called timers. So we use timers to mimic a real user behavior. And in performance testing, it is mandatory. Otherwise, 90% of the performance testers, the mistake they do is they don't use timers and they write test plans and they hit it to the server for hundreds of users and thousands of users, which is not a realistic case. Because a real server tells you that no user in the world or no user on this planet hits me so fast, because every human being has an emotion. That emotion could be, example, let's say I have finalized, probably these perfumes. So after 20 seconds, I clicked on this and I come here And let's say, so these are some beauty products, right? Let's say my wife is doing this, the beauty products. Now what is the emotion that you carry or anyone carries? Obviously the percentage of discount that you are getting, that's an emotion running in my mind for sure. And what is the cost associated with it, right? Because money is important, you don't want to spend unnecessarily, right? So these are the two emotional factors that I use, or maybe deciding factors that I use before I click and finalize anything. Let's say you finalized some color. Now what is the another emotion, or what is the another psychological thing that's running on your mind? Obviously here you will see, probably, yeah. So I look at this, you also look at this, how many people rated this, what is the rating we have got. Now how many people gave 5-star rating, that is also important, right? Before you buy any product. So when you're doing all these things, you are not clicking on anything, you are not sending a request to server. All these things should be considered in performance testing, and the element that you have to make use of is JMeter timer. So if you use timers, you are providing a report to the developer which is a realistic report, not a artificial report. Okay. So using these configuration elements and using these timers, you are converting the artificial test report into natural test report, meaning a realistic test report. Okay. If a developer is very technical, if your project managers understand all these concepts, they question the testing team, saying, hey, is this pointing to specific infrastructure and a report is given, or it is like you are pointing in the air and giving a report? Now we need to have answers. And they might say, are you simulating a browser? Are you simulating a real user? Are you simulating this concept? Are you simulating a network strategy? All these questions will be asked either by developer or project manager or by the client. If you don't get these questions, okay, you are lucky. But if you get these questions, how would you answer them? That's why we have these chapters to focus on them. I'll take a pause here. Anyone has questions, or is it clear? And I repeat, I have messaged you guys on the chat window. Please help me with your details so that we can get back to you with the TOC and with a couple of follow-up questions. Okay, I hope I'm clear until this point. May I continue, or do you guys have any question to ask? You can unmute, guys. Please unmute and confirm.
You can continue.
Thank you. Okay, then we have chapter 9, which is JMeter controllers, logic controllers. These logic controllers can be compared to your programming code. Example, I can say if condition, for condition, while condition, switch condition, break condition, etc. Right? So in JMeter, we can achieve all these conditional executions that a regular Java developer does. We use here something called logic controllers, and we control the flow of our performance test case execution. For that, JMeter has provided multiple logic controllers to control the order of execution. See, for example, I've started from chapter 1, then chapter 2, chapter 3 until chapter 9. So I'm following a sequential order to help you understand what do I teach. So similarly, JMeter also follows a sequential execution. If you want sequential execution, we use something like simple controller, transaction controller. But if I want to randomize my chapters and explain you, then I use a random controller or random order controller. One of you says, Kiran, repeat chapter 8 one more time, I did not understand. Then it is like a loop controller. I'm looping it for the second time. Or I use runtime controller to do that. So we have different controllers to achieve different ways of test execution in performance testing. So that's what chapter 9 is also about. Chapter 10 is where we'll talk about some third party tools which we can use to record your user actions on a browser and generate a JMeter script and directly use the script in JMeter tool. Until chapter 9, we are doing it on our own. But chapter 10, I will teach you not one tool, I will teach you 3 tools in the market. One is BlazeMeter tool. It's a Chrome plugin I'm going to use. 2 is we are going to install a software called Bad Boy. 3, we are going to use the HTTPS test script recorder, which is provided by JMeter. Using these 3 tools, I don't have to build a test plan in JMeter. I can directly record my actions on a browser, convert that recorded script into JMeter script, then open it in JMeter tool. So it's like record and playback. Whatever you generally do in Selenium or Quick Test Professional or any other third-party tools that you use, automation tools that you use, we also have same facility even for JMeter. So that record and playback option also chapter 10 will introduce you. Chapter 11 focuses on how do you approach performance testing for REST APIs or SOAP APIs and web services with JMeter tool. Until chapter 10, I'm focusing on web applications. Chapter 11 focuses on exclusively for APIs also, because these days API testing has become so popular and so important that you cannot say that you don't know what is an API. You cannot say that you don't know how to test APIs. So I'm going to teach that both theoretically and practically. How do you approach performance testing and load testing for SOAP APIs and REST APIs using JMeter tool in chapter 11. Chapter 12 focuses on a very important performance testing automation technique called data-driven automation. I'm sure you are aware of what is data-driven automation, but I'll take an example. When you test a test case with different values of test data, we call it as data-driven automation testing. Example, if I take the regular famous login example, you have a username, you have a password. I give you 20 different usernames and I give you 20 different passwords. And I'll tell you, please test the login scenario or login test case for these 20 usernames, 20 passwords. So same test case you are executing 20 times with 20 different sets of test data. That is called as data driven testing. If you're doing it manually, it's data driven manual testing. If you're using an automation tool like Selenium or JMeter, you call it as data driven automation testing. So same concept we will apply in JMeter, but for performance testing. Okay. So how do you do data driven automation load testing in JMeter? That's what chapter 12 focuses. And 90% of your performance testing test cases will need chapter 12. Okay. Which means without doing data driven automation load testing, you cannot even solve any test case in your project. It is a mandatory topic, a mandatory feature in any problem statement, in any test case in your organization, anywhere in the world. Then we have chapter 13 where I teach you JMeter pre-processors. So pre-processors are like, I can say, prerequisites. So before doing performance testing execution, do you want something else to execute first? Those things can be achieved using preprocessors. And I'm going to teach you 5 different preprocessors that JMeter provides. One is HTML link parser, then 2 sample timeout, user parameters, JDBC, which is related to Java database connectivity databases, then a programming related bean shell preprocessor. Very easy, all these things, and very, very useful topics. So it is like I have a test case. Before I execute the test case, I want something else to happen. So that I achieve it using preprocessors. Then the test case will execute. After the test case is executed, I want a cleanup action to happen. To happen for the cleanup actions, you use post processors. And I'm going to teach these many post processors again, 5, 6 different post processors. In this process, I will also tell you important thing, how do you handle dynamic server values? How do you handle correlation? How do you handle regular expressions? Okay. These are the interview questions they will say, like, do you know how to handle server values which changes dynamically? The answer is post processors. And sometimes they say, do you know what is correlation? The answer is chapter 14. They say, do you know how to use regular expression extractors or JSON extractors? The answer is chapter 14. Now, chapter 14 is the brain of this entire course, the heart and soul of this course. Why? I'll tell you. Not even a single test case can be solved without chapter 14. Okay. At least in my experience, when I automate 100 test cases, 95 test cases expect me to use chapter 14. 5% test cases may not expect me, but 95% of my test cases tells me that you have to do chapter 14 in your mind, otherwise you cannot solve 95% of your test cases. That is the importance of chapter 14, which means this is the heart and soul of JMeter course or any other tool that you learn in the market for LoadRunner or NeoLoad or self test. Okay. Then in chapter 15, we will talk about how do you generate test reports. Obviously, that is very important for a test engineer, right? Our job is to generate test reports and give it to my developer or project manager. The different reports that you can generate in JMeter is a CSV report, comma separated values. A CSV test report we can generate, and also a HTML test report we can generate. So I'll show you how to generate these two reports and how to understand the report so that you can explain to your developers the report. Because sending a report to developer is not enough. You have to explain them how to read the report, how to visualize the report, how to comprehend the KPI metrics inside the report. That is important for us. And these reports can be generated from graphical user interface, meaning from the tool, JMeter tool, and from the non-GUI version of the tool, meaning I'll open a command prompt and I will write some commands here. So I'll write some JMeter commands, and these commands will generate a CSV test report or a HTML test report. So I'll also teach how to generate these reports from the GUI interface and non-GUI interfaces. And in this chapter, I will also talk about Jenkins tool, which is another tool I teach along with this course, because these days in the interviews, participants are asked to integrate JMeter with Jenkins. Now, what is Jenkins? We'll talk about that in the upcoming classes, probably when we come to chapter 15. So in this chapter, we will discuss how to download Jenkins, how to set up, how to log in, how to launch, how to configure, and how to tell Jenkins, talk to JMeter, run it at so-and-so time, scheduled time, and generate a report and email to my developer. That is what we are going to discuss in chapter 15. Chapter 16 focuses on the different plugins that are available for JMeter. So if you just Google it also, you can find it. JMeter plugins. There are nearly 110 plugins available for JMeter. So these are the add-ons or additional softwares developed for JMeter tool. When you have a requirement, you can go and download those plugins here. So you see, so many plugins are there for JMeter. Just like for Android phone, you have a Play Store. For iPhone, you have an App Store to install the apps of your choice. You have these plugins that you can install for JMeter tool to solve your specific project statements. Now, I may not teach all these plugins, but I will pick like one or two. From graphs, I'll pick maybe three. From thread groups, I'll pick one. From timers, okay, there is nothing. From listeners, I'll pick two. From tools, I'll pick one. From functions, I'll pick one. From samplers, I'll pick two. And I'll explain them, how to install, how to uninstall, how to use it in the real projects. So I have written certain plugins which I'm going to teach in my course. Now, why these plugins? Because they are necessary plugins that most of the performance testers use in the real world. So I have picked up the very important ones. Chapter 17 focuses on the functions that are available in JMeter. Now, these functions help you to generate any dynamic data based on the function. So we can use functions for data-driven automation testing also. So I'll explain most of the functions available in JMeter tool, and that becomes very handy for solving most of the problem statements in the project. Then we'll talk about JMeter variables, like how do you create a variable, how do you destroy the variable, and JMeter also provides a certain templates and the debugging practices, like how do you debug if your test case has failed, like how do you take care of self-help. Those things will be part of my chapter 17, and obviously there will be a case study or an assignment. Now, since it is not a, usually I have prepared this for corporates. Usually after the training, I give them like half a day to practice everything so that I can help them. In this, since it is a daily course, 1 hour class every day, 7 a.m. to 8 a.m. Indian standard timings. After the class is completed, you guys can practice. And the next day, the first 5 minutes is reserved for questions and answers based on the yesterday's class and your practice. And I will also provide the detailed material. Like you see here, I have the JMeter material prepared here. I'll share you the post assessment, meaning it's a multiple choice questionnaire along with answers. I'll share all these notes via Google Drive once the class is completed or the course is completed. So here, if you see, I have nearly 90 or 100 common questions that are asked in the interviews. Okay, 90 questions along with answers in green color. Then I have a pre-assessment. I do it for corporates, but I'll share all this material with you. This is like to check your knowledge before you enroll in the course. Here I have like 50 questions or probably 40 questions. Then you have subject to assignment. This is like, sometimes students ask me like, hey, you give me an assignment, we'll try to solve it. So I have prepared here, like in assignment one, you have to do this setup on your computer. So I'll also give these things to you guys. Assignment two is this, then assignment three, assignment 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So I have given multiple assignments for you guys to practice based on the course coverage that we do. And this is the real-time notes that I'm going to share with you. Performance testing notes end to end. This notes is like, I would say, whatever the Bhagavad Gita or the Bible for the entire JMeter. And I have prepared it on my own. No copy paste from anywhere. It is 208 pages document. And this notes is helpful in a way where I have given the problem statements. So the red color is a problem statement and how to solve it. What is the solution? And I have given the screenshots of JMeter tool as well, how to solve it. Okay. It's not that I'm just going to share these notes. We are going to do the same thing in our course. We'll also prepare a notes like this in our course also, but I'll share these notes because this is a notes that I prepared for almost 30 days by doing 2 different batches, and my experiences with the 2 to 3 different batches, I kept it in a document like this so that every student who enrolls in my course can benefit from this. So you have detailed steps and detailed screenshots as well, how to solve it. And I have solved nearly 100 plus problem statements that you can see here. Okay, numbering I have to change it. The numbers are duplicated. So this is the notes I'm going to share with you. And you'll also see the regular questions that you have to ask the developers before you do performance testing, some sample performance test plans, some sample performance test reports. Like if you want a report that looks like this, you wanted to generate a report and share with your developers, I can give you these templates, these metrics. Okay. And I have some other reports as well, which I use for my clients. I have also made it little generic so I can share with my participants. So these reports you can share with your developers. I have the templates and some reusable test cases for performance testing. So this is the material I'm going to share with all the students, and every class that we do is getting recorded, and you will get access to the recorded videos on a daily basis. You will get the access to notes and the recorded class, and it is lifetime access. And we keep all the videos on our private YouTube channel, and you will get access only to your email ID. You cannot download it, you can view it lifetime. Okay. And the notes I will give it via Google Drive. You can download the notes. Okay. And this is the realistic notes that I'm going to share with you. If you see, there is no PowerPoints. It's all the documents that I have prepared on my own. So this course has certain prerequisites, like you need to have some basic understanding of the protocols, what is an application, what is a web application, the APIs. And this is a lab setup that we are going to do on your computers based on the coverage that we do every day. I'll help you with the lab setups. You don't have to worry about that. And this course is for 1 month. Okay. We do the courses from Monday to Friday. Saturday and Sunday is usually a holiday for you guys to practice. And you can reach out to me on WhatsApp for any questions that you have when you are practicing it during the course. I'll also give my email address. You can send an email also. If you have a big question that you can't put it on WhatsApp, you can email me with the screenshot of your problem, the error you are getting, and I'll give a reply to it throughout the course and after the course as well. Okay. So this is what I have for today's class, which is a day 0 demonstration class about performance testing using JMeter tool. Now I'll leave the platform to you guys. If you have any generic questions, anything to ask, please feel free to go ahead and ask me your questions. And while you are doing it, I'll just copy the names and the numbers that you have given. I'll stop my screen share for a while. Yeah. So please utilize this time, guys, to ask me questions. We have like 10 more minutes.
Hey, hi. I have just one question. So we are going to learn Bean Cell scripting also.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. I could see only 4 participants giving their contact details. May I request the rest of the folks also to give me those details, please, so that my team can share the TOC with you guys. So I've received it from Janani, Srinivas, Nadeem, Rahul. Okay, your name and the number, please, so we can contact you.
Hi, good morning.
Yeah, hi.
Yeah, I have just a question regarding that. Nowadays, applications are moving towards cloud, and there is features in cloud that auto scaling. So, is it necessary for cloud applications also? Performance testing is required. I'm not aware of this. So just ask.
The answer is yes. See, auto scaling is all about whether you are able to increase the number of servers to handle the incoming load. And suddenly, when
Okay,
the incoming users count is decreasing, you want to decrease the number of servers which are launched automatically. So auto scaling helps you to scale up your server infrastructure and to scale down your infrastructure, because that's a way to save money for the organization. Performance testing is all about for one server. I mean, when I have deployed one server, how much time the server is taking to respond to the client, right?
okay,
So auto scaling is for the DevOps team to focus on ensuring that every customer gets a response. Performance testing is for the testers to check how much time it is taking to respond to one customer. Right? So both are two different
okay,
topics, but both go hand in hand. So performance testing is still mandatory even when you move to cloud.
okay. Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Just asking for the use cases for nowadays. Yeah.
Yeah, no problem. You can still ask.
Hi, I have a question.
Yes, please.
Uh, actually, I have experience in manual testing, but I don't have experience in coding as such. So, will I be able to learn? Like, I just want to know if this involves more of a coding or something.
Okay. So when you look at this JMeter tool, this tool, the way JMeter is getting promoted is uh, no code automation tool, or a low code, LOW, low code, or NO code, no code automation tool. Most of the performance testing in JMeter can be done using the configurations, meaning you add the test element, you have a GUI, you have to fill the data in the GUI text boxes or in the editor, and your performance testing can be achieved. Which means if you say that, hey Kiran, I'm not a programmer, I don't know Java, I don't know Build Shell, do you think JMeter is okay for me? My answer and every trainer answer is yes, because JMeter does not expect someone to come from programming background. If they come from regular manual testing background, it is more than sufficient. But if I talk about tools like, let's say I'm teaching a tool called Gatling, or I'm teaching a tool called Silk Performer, then if you are not coming from programming background, you cannot learn those tools. Like Gatling tool is a programming tool. Without knowing programming, you can't even learn that tool. But JMeter is opposite. So simple answer is yes, everyone is welcome to learn JMeter. Even if you bring in a fresher, he or she can easily learn JMeter because it is all about configuration. 95% of the course, 95% of the tool is without coding, 5% is only the coding process, which is like optional, not mandatory also.
Oh, thank you.
Okay, and those who forgot to give their details, please message me on the chat. And any further questions you have, please let me know, guys. We have another 5 more minutes before we sign off. Okay. Okay then. So if there are no more questions, thank you very much for joining this day zero demonstration class. We'll continue the classes starting from tomorrow. Day one class starts from tomorrow. My team will reach out to you guys. So if you have any questions, you can please follow up with my team. Thank you very much for joining this demonstration class. See you tomorrow. Take care. Bye bye.